Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Team Tuesday this week with Inderdip Vraich. Hi Inderdip, welcome back.
Hi Vasco, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So on Tuesdays, we talk about teams and, of course, how they sometimes become their own worst enemies. But before we jump into that, do share with us, Inderdip, what was the book that most influenced you in your career as a Scrum Master?
One book I keep on going back to is The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time by Jeff Sutherland and J.J. Sutherland. This is one book, even if you have worked in Agile and Scrum for so long, this is one book which I keep on going back. And I might not read the full book from, beginning to end. I will keep visiting one chapter or the other chapter. And after each chapter, there are like takeaways for each chapter, which are so good. And I really love this book. And I think all Scrum Masters should read this book. And this book was published in 2014. So it's quite an old book, but it's still valid in this world.
Can you share with us some of one or two insights that you got from reading this book?
Okay, so this book is, there are some great stories of success and improvements which Jeff has used in his practical life and using the Scrum techniques. So those they are based on those stories, are based on the scientific research. So there was one example he gives of there was a project in FBI which was about delivering some mission critical investigation management system and how that was saved using Scrum. And there are many more like that. And because Jeff was a fighter pilot, so his way of conveying the story, he uses one analogy, which is like hesitation or death. So that means you have to observe the system and orient and decide and act. So this is coming from his, fighter pilot background, UDA. So it's you have to take an action and decide and act. And this is the Scrum is, as it is quite valid in this world, which is so unpredictable world, the VUCA world we live in. And the small little change, so it's at one place, Jeff says, it's change or die. So you have to make changes as you go. So there are little things like these, which kind of makes it so valid in today's environment. And I love to read those, even if you understand and the full thing, how Scrum works. I mean, you can never understand because you always discover and improve and, reflect on those things and adapt as the system changes. But I love the way he has given the stories and the takeaways. They are really, really useful things. So I think every Scrum Master will learn something from it.
Great recommendation. Absolutely. We'll put the link on the show notes so that people can easily get the book. So Inderdip, now we turn our attention to the teams we work with and how sometimes they are the problem generators. There are these patterns, these behaviors that teams kind of develop over time that lead to these problems. And we want to explore those so that we may be ready to tackle them when we face those problems in our work. So walk us through a story of a team. Tell us a little bit about the context and then focus on, what were those steps that slowly developed that pattern that ultimately led to problems.
Okay, Vasco, I was working in an organization and there were multiple Scrum teams. I was part of one Scrum team. And the problem in that organization, so to say, and which kind of trickled down to the team it was a very, very high pressure organization where there was an unreasonable expectation on the teams. And team was micromanaged because there was so much pressure of the work.
So how did that micromanagement show up?
it was like, just for an example, if somebody is not in the office and that person has to leave early, then next day the question was asked, why did you leave early? Even that person has given, why did he have to leave or she has to leave? And if somebody's working from home for some reason, and then number of hours the person must have worked, and everything was questioned. So it was like micromanagement to its level. So basically, and the people in the team was really great people in terms of their skills and their commitment. But the culture of the organization was the leadership. I think it trickled down from the leadership from the top down. It was because the team was under constant pressure with the unreasonable expectations. And, in that team, there was like, even we didn't have time to run the retros because you have to complete the work. So what happened in the team, there was always emotions running high because people were so stressed and people were feeling they were not being heard. So what was happening was people were shouting at each other in the daily scrum. People will, if somebody says something and somebody question that thing, and, people will raise their voices. So it was a very, very unhappy team, where team was feeling they were not being heard, so they were demotivated. So I think this team, because the team was, demotivated and they were frustrated. So what they were doing, instead of asking for a change or, moving towards making the culture better, somehow talking to the leadership, they were just shouting at each other.
So they were a little bit like taking it out on each other, right? Like you get this frustration put on you because of the pressure and the expectations and the behavior of your leadership. And then instead of understanding, kind of being deliberate about how to handle it, we just start shouting at each other because it's one way to vent, right? To get the pressure out.
Yes. So it was not going anywhere, like, even to that extent. And the amount of work team has to do within the sprint, that was also coming from the management or the leadership will decide this is how much work you need to do in the sprint. So team has no breathing time, basically.
So if you had to go back to that situation, like let's say you have a magic time machine and you could go back to that situation, what would you have done differently?
In that team, I think it was if I'm in that position today, or I'm in go as an agile coach, I think it has to start with the leadership. You have to start talking to the leaders first. And I am 100% sure if leadership can understand how it's going to work, then team will definitely, they won't be under that much pressure and they will definitely perform to their best level. So it was like, because of the toxic culture and everything was like under so much pressure, it wasn't a happy state. So I think it's so important if the leaders can listen to the people and empower their people to, make the decisions and not impose the decisions on them. So I think if I go as an agile coach today, then I probably will start from the top and it will definitely trickle down to the team, because people in the team was so good. So it's not the people who are the problem, it's the environment in which people work. That's the problem most of the time. So if you give them the good environment, then people will come up to that level. Yeah,
absolutely. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that, Inderdip.
You're welcome, Masko.
Tuesday is Team Day here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. But tomorrow we talk about something that goes beyond the work we do with the teams. We will talk about how to lead change and what our guests have learned from leading and participating in change programs during their career. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.